Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jumps Racing Podcast here, hosted by myself, Bobby Beavers. As always, I'm joined by Nick Seddon. Now, just before we look back at what we saw over the weekend and preview the Classic Chase, just going to let you know that if you are watchers right now, this is currently on YouTube, make sure you do subscribe to see myself and Nick doing this podcast week in, week out. You get to see our smiley faces, or if you do prefer just listen to the audio, it's available on Apple Music and SoundCloud as well. Nick, as always, great to see you. A lot to look back on, and I think we're getting to see now some real Cheltenham contenders after what we saw over the weekend.
Hi, Bobby. Yeah, good to see you as always. It's a quick turnaround for us, isn't it? Because we were only here on Thursday doing a podcast. So luckily for us, there's plenty to talk about as usual. As you say, Cheltenham clues are plenty and a big old debate brewing up in the Champion Hurdle division, which we'll get onto as well.
Yeah, there certainly is indeed. I've got my reservations about that, by the way, but we'll come to that very, very shortly. But we'll start first with the Grade 1, what we saw on Saturday at Sandown. It was the Tolworth Hurdle, was very, very impressive. Great display from what we saw on Saturday. Now, this is the interesting thing about it. I've been looking at the entries. So he's entered for the Supreme, he's entered for the Ballymore, and he's also entered for the Albert Bartlett as well. Out of the three, where would you put him? Let's put it. Where would you put him, Nick, out of those three?
Well, yeah, it's as you say, it's a really intriguing one, isn't it? And he probably deserves to be in all three markets because he's shown a lot of versatility. And I think the key thing here with this is that we have to remember a bit of yard politics, really, when it comes to Colin Tizard, because he has three very, very good novice hurdlers in Master Debonair, the Big Breakaway, and this Fiddlerontheroof. And it's really just a case of trying to, I suppose, be as broad a challenge as Tizard can manage, because I imagine he will want to be a top trainer or challenge to be top trainer at the festival. So I imagine that is, bearing punters and bookies are bearing that in mind. But me personally, I think he's a supreme horse, a supreme novices horse. It was a supreme performance, but this race is an indicator, the Tolworth, for the Supreme Novices Hurdle. Only two horses, admittedly, have won both this century, as we said last week. But it was hard not to be impressed with that performance. The way which he beat that field, and we came into it when we did the preview saying we thought there was quite a few nice types in there. The way he beat them and decimated them, pulled away from potentially smart performers, was really, really impressive. And I think the fact that he's 8-1 for the Supreme Novices Hurdle is a big clue about where his loyalties lie, because it may also be a case with, Colin Tizard will want to keep them separate if possible, but there's a certain 13-8 favourite in the Ballymore that everybody will want to avoid as well.
Yes, definitely, indeed. Just talking about though his rivals as well, Nick. Do you think for the other horses that he beat, it'd be a case of going back to the drawing board with them?
I think so. Yeah. For some of these novices, the majority of them were having just their third or fourth start. So we know that Sandown can come up very soft. It was soft on Saturday. It's a big shock sometimes for these novice hurdlers to face testing ground. I thought the mare Jeremy's Flame came out with plenty of credit from over in Ireland, came from Gavin Cromwell's yard. She looked a really smart mare. She went down fighting, and she's one to consider for the Dawn Run, I think. For the rest of them, you say, Son of Camas got powerful connections indeed with Nicky Henderson and Calvadorje as well from Paul Nichols. I'm sure that they will go back to the drawing board and they will go on to have productive careers as well. But it might be a big compliment to be beaten the way they were by this Fiddlerontheroof. We'll just have to wait and see.
Just talking about their Envoi Allen that won the Grade 1 on Sunday at Naas. Again, multiple entries at the festival. There's an entry for the Supreme, the Champion Hurdle as well. But as it stands at the moment for the Ballymore, the 13-8 market leader, which would insist that that's where he'll end up. However, there is this question mark over the Champion Hurdle.
There is, yeah. And I suppose you can see why. I think the thing is with Cheltenham is, I suppose, when there is a division that is particularly weak or looks open like the Champion Hurdle, you're going to have punters, fans, trainers looking at their options and considering whether they have something maybe from the left field. So in the past few weeks, the mare Honeysuckle, her name has been thrown around because she's been so good in her division. And it's only natural, really, if you've got such a good novice like this Envoi Allen has proven to be so far. He's made 3 starts over hurdles and he's been flawless in all 3. He's 2 Grade 1 wins already under his belt. And it's almost inevitable that people are going to want to see him thrown in the deep end because it's so exciting. But personally, I just think there's no point as if you are being totally selfish from if it's your horse. You've got a Grade 1 at the Cheltenham Festival on offer in the novice division. That is so much easier to go after at this stage with a horse that's still learning his trade at 6. I think you are really asking an awful lot of the horse to step up into open company like that, the Champion Hurdle. And, it looks like the Ballymore is going to be the number 1 target. That's because he won on Sunday in the Lawlor of Naas Novices Hurdle. That was over 2.5 miles. The Ballymore is over 2.5. So that you'd think that would be the target, but he's showing plenty of speed so far. There's no reason why he can't drop back and win the Supreme. And I tell you what, if he did actually go for the Champion Hurdle, if you take my opinion out and let's say they chuck him in and are really sporting about it, looking at the Champion Hurdle, you'd have to fancy him, I think.
That's what I'm going to say to you. I'm going to say in previous years we probably would have sat here and said, go for the Ballymore, keep it simple. However, this year and looking at that 2-mile division, you've really got to fancy your chances, surely.
You've got to, haven't you? We don't want to bash the Champion Hurdling division too much, but we said a lot about Epitant in last episode, and it's a weak division when a mare like that is suddenly favoured the Champion Hurdle off the back of 1 Grade 1 performance, and bubbles have just been bursting left, right, and centre in this division. So a lot of them have holes in. Classical Dream has struggled so far this term. Pentland Hills. He was another Cheltenham hero last season. It didn't go to plan for him in the international hurdle. But at the same time, if those horses bounce back, it would be a big ask for a novice to take them on, definitely.
Just looking ahead at what we saw, looking back, I beg your pardon, not looking ahead, just looking back at what we saw on Sunday also at Plumpton. It was the Sussex National. It went in the way of Christmas in April. Well, it weren't Christmas in April. It was Christmas in January for this horse. But he got the job done there for Colin Tizard and Harry Cobden.
Yeah, he did. And I think it's worth pointing out that this is a really, really good card down at Plumpton. I don't know if you've been before, Bobby, but it really is one of my favourites, Plumpton.
Right.
It's a cracking course, and they do have this mystical bonus as well if you can win a race at Plumpton and go on to win the Cheltenham Festival. I don't know if it's still going, but I think it's about £60,000 on offer. And I don't think we've got a Cheltenham hero here in Christmas in April, but his name might be a clue as to where his future may lie. He's still only an 8-year-old, but there might be a certain April showpiece on the radar in the future. But I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's won a variation of the Grand National, the Sussex National, and he looked a really promising stayer in doing so. This is his 2nd win on the trot for Colin Tizard. He showed plenty of stamina to win over 3.5 miles. He handled really testing conditions, and he came out on top by just shy of 2 lengths off a mark of 123. Now, he's a world away from the national. We say every week you need about 145 to guarantee yourself a run. But I imagine for a horse that's showing plenty of stamina over 3.5 miles, I think he'll go up to about 130 for this. I wonder if the Ida next month at Newcastle might be on the radar for him.
Yeah, great shout to head up to Gosforth Park. Duplantis Shed was also in the Wiz enclosure on Sunday afternoon. Now, he beat the Northumberland Plate winner from this year with a certain Who's Dares wins. But it's interesting, though, with Duplantis Shed because he has been a novice for some time now.
He has, yeah, and it's almost nice to see him finally click into place because he almost became a running joke with how frustrating he was. He was with Gordon Elliott for what felt like eternity. He's been novice chasing now for quite some time, since back in 2017, and it always felt like he'd find a way to be beaten. He'd be sent off as favourite for these novice contests, for these bigger pots, and he'd run really well at times, but would would conspire to be beaten in the latter stages. But I think it was a hint of just how high that Connections thought of him, that he was sent off as he was 11-2 back in 2018 for the Close Brothers handicap chase. There was a big gamble behind him. It was very much the plotting horse.
What year was that, Nick? Was that the year that Mr. Whittaker won it?
2018 it was, so a couple of years ago.
I think it was Mr. Was it Mick Shannon, Brian Hughes?
It was spot on. Mr. Whittaker came out on top. But that's just a level of how highly they thought of him. It never went to plan, but he left the Gordon Elliott team. He changed hands. He's now with Susie Best, and things seem to be clicking into place with him. He won at Newton Abbot back in August, and he'd run once since. He's now won 2 of his last 3 starts when he won on Sunday. It's a pretty notable scalp, and I think he's really interesting. He's never one to put full faith in temperament-wise, but we've got here a 10-year-old novice, one of the most experienced novices going. He might just be worth keeping an eye on over the next few weeks and months, because I imagine his Connections, his new trainer, will be very canny with him. They've got a very experienced novice, and there are some decent pots up at this time of year in these smaller novice races. Wouldn't surprise me either if they went for a bit of a sequence, or if they decided to chuck him in one of these big pot novice contests like the National Hunt Chase in a couple of months' time.
He's not the only older novice chaser though around. There's a certain 12-year-old gelding, a novice chaser now as well, with a certain Fahima. No, I agree with everything what you said there, Nick, in terms of the plotting shed. It'd be interesting to see where Connections do go with him going forward. Right then, we've got a real treat for the viewers and the listeners now here of the Jumps Racing podcast, because we're going to hear now from former England, Liverpool and Real Madrid footballer Steve McManaman on the Gold Cup.
So I just thought I'd chat with you basically about the Cheltenham Gold Cup picture after the festive period, because so much happened.
Yeah.
We'll start with the King George and the winner, Clanders Obo.
Wow,
I mean, he's now a dual King George winner. Is he the one to beat in the Gold Cup?
Funny enough, I thought he was he was incredibly impressive, wasn't he, winning the King George? I just don't know how impressive the race will run, as in compared with the Gold Cup picture, only because Surname looks as if he just didn't stay, which is fine, because now they found that out, no problem. Lost in Translation was going well before they made that really bad mistake, and it's had its wins on, isn't it? So the race mightn't pan out as if it might have been the greatest King George, regardless of Clanders Obo winning as well as it did. I don't want to disrespect the victory, because he won so well, and it was a great race. But I don't know whether. Yes, he's the one to beat, but of course Alboon Photo won at the weekend. Who of course is the Cheltenham Gold Cup holder. Kenboy ran, so there's still a few. If anything, it's probably the best form, but whether it's good enough to win the race because of how it finished last year is another question, actually. Native River's out is about 20-1, I think, in the market. Of course, that's ground dependent. So I still think there's a lot of question marks actually leading up to the festival.
What did you think about Lost in Translation? Do you think it was just a blip and he'll be back? I mean, they sort of, the Tizard suggested it could be a wind problem. Would you still think he'll be one come March?
Yes, I think so. The way it was running, and it was it didn't look entirely comfortable. But then that bad mistake when it jumped the fence, you see it knock the wind out of it, and the fact that they've said it's going to have a wind operation beforehand, I think it'll help. It's only a baby, of course, in the realms of the proper 3 mile chasers coming up against a lot of the experienced horses. But if you were looking at the race again, if you were saying the King George or the Cheltenham Gold Cup, I'd fancy it. Looking at the way the race panned out and the races before the Peter Marsh at the Betfair at Haydock, I'd fancy Lost in Translation to finish ahead of Surname. So at least they're sort of getting to where they need to know if it can get 3 miles, if it can get 3 mile 2 at Cheltenham, which of course is like 3 mile 4 anywhere else. So at least they're starting to get the proper horses into the Gold Cup. But I think a lot of the Cheltenham races a lot of the form at the minute seems to lie in Ireland. When I look at the two sets of racing, a lot of the decent animals what I've seen on the track at least all seem to be based in Ireland. So it could be an Ireland winner very heavy this year at Cheltenham, because all my eyes are drawn to the Irish horses at the moment when I'm looking for the Cheltenham form.
Yeah, I suppose you mentioned that, and it was a Savills Chase, wasn't it, over Christmas? And the 1-2 there probably weren't two that you'd expect, Deltawork and Monolly. Do you think we've got to consider them now?
Yeah, I don't think they're good enough for the Gold Cup as well. But even though they ran, they ran really well, and Deltawork nipped it on the line, they all finished in a bit of a bunch that day, and I don't necessarily like that either. I think the Gold Cup is such a unique race, isn't it? It's. I know we've had surprise winners in the past, Lord Windermere's and whatever, but normally the good horses really come to the fore, the good staying horses. And I put Clanders Oboe's form ahead of Deltawork and Monolly. I'd put that way ahead of that. It's just whether the likes of Alboon Photo, the likes of Kenboy, how tuned up, how fit and ready are they going to be, fully wound up to the best of their ability on the day? Because I still think that form is a little tiny bit better than Clanders Oboe. And as I said, I don't want to cramp Clanders Oboe, because it was an incredible achievement by Paul Nicholls. His first run in Ireland was impressive, but then to follow it up with that type of victory in the King George, you can't really knock it. But the fact that he's still not favourite for the big day shows that there's people have got a few negatives about it.
Yeah, you mentioned Kenboy. I don't know about you, Steve, but I sort of get the feeling that he's building up to something. They have.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's been so many problems with the ownership issues and whatnot, and and we haven't seen him. And then he comes out and runs okay the other day. But as you rightly said, it's as if the building up. The peak of the mountain is Cheltenham. And we know Nicky Henderson gets his horses ready. We know everybody targets the horses for those days. And the fact that they're nice and they're going nice and slowly with him, and maybe the ownership issues has been a plus for them, where they can withdraw it from the limelight and introduce it slowly, might be a good thing. But the fact that we've only just seen Alboon Photo, and the fact that we've only just seen Kenboy, I think and they ran decent enough races first time out. That was a nice race the other day. Presenting Percy didn't run too good, so there's a few cross marks against a few, but there's a few little plus points, as in people are starting to reach the peak at the right time.
That's the thing with Alboon Photo. It's easy to forget. I think that he's the favourite because he's got under the radar, but he's the only one with Cheltenham form under his belt coming into the Gold Cup.
Well, yeah, and he's sort of the the forgotten horse. Weirdly enough, if you go and ask people on the streets who won the Cheltenham Gold Cup last year, not a lot of them would say Alboon Photo. People talk about Might Bite or Native River or going back to Corto Stars and the Denmans. There's trendier horses out there, but as you said, Alboon Photo came, won the race, went away, without a minimum of fuss really, and because it was an Irish winner, of course. It doesn't, it's not sort of rammed in our faces in England a lot. But the race the other day was a nice little prep for it, wasn't it? And of course the master trainer makes sure Willie Mullins he gets them ready, doesn't he? So I think that's the thing. The fact that we all love Cheltenham and we all gear up to it. A lot of people don't know the form and of course don't know the handicap marks of the horses in Ireland. But every time I look, and even looking yesterday at Naas, there was some really nice performances from these horses, and you fully expect them to get even better, and for the festival when it comes around.
As you say, it didn't seem like Surname stayed the 3 miles. Now Altior's due to run at the weekend over 2.5 miles.
Yeah,
it'd be quite nice to see a rematch between those two.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, and you just wonder. It'll be interesting to see, won't it? Because you wonder whether what happens at the weekend. Whether Altior could easily go back to the Queen Mother. Could easily drop back down to 2. So it'll be interesting to see whether they want to take each other on, or whether they would more than happy to avoid each other, and go for the 2.5 mile or the Ryanair or whatever the case is. But you wonder whether they'll just stay away from each other because of course to get a winner at Cheltenham is the most important thing, whether it's the Ryanair, whether it's the Queen Mother. Of course, they're all big races and some have got more prestige than the other. But to get a winner at Cheltenham is so good and, so fantastic for the owners that it'll be interesting to see what Altior does and how well it stays. And likewise, because as we said, Altior loves Cheltenham. There's another couple of furlongs on to every distance of Cheltenham because of the way the races have run, the pace of the races, and of course the steep hill coming home.
So that was Steve McManaman. A real pleasure to hear from a footballing legend, Bobby, who, I suppose at the start of this season, we didn't expect someone like that to be on with us.
No, we certainly didn't. And how lucky are we to get Steve McManaman on as well, because for me, growing up as a young lad in the 90s, I watched Steve McManaman play football for England and Liverpool. What a fantastic football player he was, and great. He's a massive racing enthusiast as well. His own horses in the past, and he knows his stuff as well, which is great. So we're very lucky to have him on the podcast.
Certainly does know his stuff, and didn't do too badly with the horses either. Owned a certain Seabold at the beginning of the century that you may remember. Chased home a certain Moscow Flyer, I think 2002, I think. So. Anyway, Bobby, I thought I'd turn this round to you now. I'm in the hot seat, which is very exciting. And you may have spotted that something over the last few days on horseracing.net that really lit up Twitter. We had a debate about the most underrated racecourses in the UK, and it was just a really good opportunity to sing the praises about some of the smaller tracks, because we all know how good Cheltenham and Ascot and the likes are, but there are plenty of hidden gems in there. So I've set you a task of maybe flagging up a couple of race courses that you've been to that maybe are perhaps a little bit smaller that you enjoyed, and just to put them up really. Thank you for this, and I'm going to turn it back to you as well. So I hope you've got yours. I can't let you be in the hot seat for too long now, can I, Nick? But I've narrowed it down to three. To be honest with you, though, I could have named a lot, because I think there's some fantastic race courses out there that don't necessarily get the credit, if I'm being honest. So what I've done, I've narrowed it down to three. My first one is Leicester. Really enjoy Leicester. It's actually one of my favourite race courses as well. Punting, I've always done well there. Something just falls right for me, and I've always had great days out when I've gone down there as well with the family. The same could be said for Nottingham as well. I remember once upon a time when they used to have like jumps racing at Nottingham also. That was some years ago before that finished. But again, Nottingham, relatively small track, go there with the family, had some good success there as well. I know they have the Nottinghamshire Oaks, which is run midweek, so another great track that I do like. But the one that I'm really going to sing the praises for is Uttoxeter, because in my opinion, Nick, this is one of the best race courses in the country, without a shadow of a doubt. It's a great day for everybody. When I take my kids, we absolutely have an amazing day there. The racing's brilliant. I love the Midlands Grand National. You've got the Summer Cup as well. The team at Uttoxeter are absolutely phenomenal. They're so friendly. They work hard. They're just brilliant from start to finish. And I would like to see them actually get some form a graded race, to be honest with you. Grade 3, grade 2, grade 1 even. Let's see them get a grade 1, whether that be a chase or over the hurdles. But yeah, I cannot speak any more highly of Uttoxeter. And I'll emphasise this as well, Nick. It is one of the best race courses in the UK. I agree with you, Bobby. I'm lucky enough to have been to quite a few race courses, thanks to my dad. And I always remember going to Uttoxeter. It's just you feel really close to the action. I don't know what it is. Yeah. It's a proper national hunt track.
It's like homely as well, isn't it? It's got a nice atmosphere to it. Definitely.
And, you've also got the added bonus that if your kids don't really fancy it, you can drop them off at Alton Towers and have fun to yourself.
Not too far away.
Not too far at all, no.
So, though, for yourself, right, I've given you my three. Yeah. Which one or ones are you going to give a mention to?
Well, I certainly agree with you on Uttoxeter, and to be honest, I agree with you on all three that you came out with. And there are plenty of race courses that deserve a mention here. Two that I'm going to put up. One was near my old haunting ground when I used to work at Timeform. Pontefract wasn't too far away. Ponte Carlo. We just talked about
Uncle Norman.
Absolutely, we just talked about a proper jumps track at Uttoxeter. Ponte's a proper flat track, and there's some really good racing there as well. The Tankard Stakes, that's a listed contest. Usually see a good horse there if you go there often. And the other one, and to be honest, if you've read the article, you already know, or if you follow me on Twitter, you know I'm obsessed with the place. But Carmel Racecourse, it really is an absolute gem. Have you ever been yourself?
It's one race course I've not been to, but it's on the bucket list.
I couldn't recommend it enough. I really couldn't. It's perfect for the family as well. And it's just a bonkers race course. It's inside out, so the whole grandstand is in the infield. And because of that, really, everything is all together. So that the family section and the fair is on one side, and then you've got so you've got a nice atmosphere, and then a bit more of a serious race goer. They all mingle together. The racing, you're not going to see Corto Star, but it's getting better all the time. They have their own £40,000 feature. Tom Jones is there in the summer, and there's the village next door as well with sticky toffee pudding. So as a cake man, Bobby, that's got to draw you in, surely.
most definitely. Indeed, I quite enjoyed doing that actually. Speaking about some of the race course there. Right then, let's look forward now to the Classic Chase on Saturday at Warwick. We know that a lot of trainers use this as a trial and a stepping stone towards the Grand National in particular. A few years ago, One for Arthur won this race. He went on to win the Grand National after that. Milan's Bar will come to that horse in a second. Won this race a few years ago also, and then went on to finish fifth in the Grand National. Let's start then at the time of recording with the market leader, the conditional here, who ran a crack last time to finish second in the Ladbrokes Trophy.
Yeah, very much so, and probably the right favourite at the time of recording, either. And you know what? This is a really, really competitive race, but the conditional really arrives here on a proper upward trajectory. He's only been with David Bridgewater for a handful of starts this season, but he's come on so quickly. He got off the mark 2 starts ago at Cheltenham over fences, so that tells you how fast he's progressing. And that form is really working out well, because he beat 2 in second and third in West Approach and Coggery, who've gone on to win at the November and then the December meetings respectively at Cheltenham. So that form has been franked, and then he built on that to finish a marvellous second in the Ladbrokes Trophy last time out. I don't think the extra trip will be an issue here. He's stepping up to 3 mile 5. It is a real test for stayers, but he's shaped as one that will appreciate that. And he's currently off a mark of 142. Now, we've talked about how the Classic Chase is an indicator of the Grand National, with One for Arthur winning it 3 years ago. And we've talked also earlier in the podcast about how 145 is the golden territory in terms of sneaking into Aintree's race. Do you think they'd want to win this race if he's on 142 now? Because if they decimate the field, he's going to be eking up towards the 150s. Yeah,
well, to be honest with you, if he wins it, then as you say, the handicap mark is going to go up. But if he does win it, the confidence is going to be high. So don't get me wrong, he might run a great race in defeats. But if it was me, you want to win this and then go and run a cracker in the Grand National. That's my opinion anyway. That's the way I'm going. And let's be honest, as we worked it out there, 150s, not a problem.
No, and I suppose the way it is these days anyway, you've got to be a good horse to win the Grand National in the modern day and age. And what better way, I suppose, than winning a race like this? But it will be no mean feat, because I imagine it will be testing as well on Saturday.
Kimberlite Candy is the second favourite at the time of record. Of course, he was second in the Beecher Chase behind Walk in the Mill. Definitely aimed at the Grand National, and I thought he ran a good race behind the winner. And I also think he'll go well on Saturday as well.
Yeah, he did. He ran brilliantly well at Aintree last month. We've just talked about how the conditional is a potential national type. Kimberlite can be is very much a national type. He thrived over the national fences on his first try in the Beecher last month, and yeah, he comes here with every chance. I mean, that form is not to be scoffed at Aintree. He had the likes of Definitely Red and One for Arthur in behind him, so he is a smart staying chaser. And he's only up £3 as well for that. He comes here off 140, so he's an 8-year-old who's very much on the up and is off a very competitive mark as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if he went off as favourite.
Petite Power, this is where I'll pause my note for Petite Power. You cannot rule out any Fergal O'Brien horse. That's my note for it.
Yeah, well, I think that's the right point, because Fergal O'Brien is having the year of his life. I think Joe, who works on our social media team, he's part of a syndicate that have a horse with Fergal O'Brien, the Millennium Racing Club, and he came out with a stat for Fergal saying that he on Saturday eclipsed his number of winners from last season on Saturday. We're only on January the 4th on Saturday, so you know, he's having a brilliant season since switching yards, and this one as well is in really good heart at the moment. Petite Power, he just failed to land a hat-trick at Exeter last month, but there was no shame in that. He's a real strong stayer. The only thing I would say about him is he's off a career high mark now. Comes here off 131, £6 higher. It's going to be a big ask for him, but as you say, don't rule out anything from Fergal O'Brien's yard.
Steely Edition. Now, this one wouldn't fill me with too much confidence, to say the least, after what we saw last time.
No, and we've mentioned this point as well a few times, is that we're still finding out about that form because it came in a listed race at Sandown back in November, and it was form that got everyone talking because it involved a certain Santini who at the start of the year was, you know, had Gold Cup aspirations and still does, because that is a really wide open division. But Santini made really hard work of it, beating now McGinty, and then who's as well, who we haven't seen since. So, but we know how good he is because he won the big race at Sandown back in April. So there's reasons to think that he can have the benefit of the doubt for that, you know, on reappearance. But at the same time, we've not seen him since. He's got to really come on for that reappearance to have any sort of chance here off what's a pretty steep mark.
Now, Regal Flow is currently in the field as it stands at the moment. Now, he was second in that veterans race, wasn't he, on Saturday? Now, is he going to go for this?
I was surprised to see his name. I suppose it's one of those when you've got a 13-year-old who has just run a Stormer and he seems to be loving the game. If he's come out of it really well on Saturday, why not? But I think that at the moment is a mark against him because he's 13 years old. It's a really big ask as a quick turnaround. And he's on a near 2-year losing run. But he is a 2018 Midlands National winner. He's here off an absolute featherweight, £8 below that winning mark when winning the Midlands National. So, you know, you can't rule him out, but I think it would take a real leap of faith to be backing a 13-year-old with any seriousness, really.
LeBroy, now this is interesting, and every time we talk about LeBroy, we always say, "Oh, it's interesting that they're doing this with him," because he ran in the West Yorkshire Hurdle on Charlie Hall Day, where he was put. Now, prior to that, he was winning, you know, the 4-miler at Cheltenham. He ran in the Beach Chase last time out. He finished 7th. Now, Jamie Codd was back on board last time out in the Beach. So, I think, for what I could gather, right, they are campaigning for a tilt at the Grand National. And what we're saying, are we saying that Jamie might come over again from Allen to ride him?
They haven't done the jockey bookings for Saturday yet, have they? So
no.
Who knows?
I wouldn't be surprised unless Jamie's got some rides, obviously, in Ireland, which I'm sure he will. You know, but I wouldn't be surprised again if he was to turn up at Warwick on Saturday. We
imagine so. It's one to take seriously if that's the case, and you do get the feeling, as you say, Bobby, that we are building up to something with LeBroy. I do think that at first glance, you look at his runs so far. I think he was last in the West Yorkshire Hurdle, and then he was 9th in the Beecher. But that was his first try over the national fences, and I thought he ran all right, to be honest, for his first go over daunting fences. So I think that there's mitigating circumstances for what we've seen so far, especially if you bear in mind that Ben Pauling's not having the best year at the moment.
No.
If they're building up to something in April, it would make sense that he would come on with every run. And I think if he shapes with any degree of, if he finishes third or fourth here, I'd be really encouraged with the Grand National in mind. So I think he's very much one to keep an eye on, but I will say that I think his mark is high enough as well at 148.
Let's talk about some previous winners, including the horse that won the race 12 months ago. Now, he won the Classic Chase, and then after that, he's had 3 runs since, and he got pulled up in every single one. So he's got plenty of P's by his name. He ran in the 4 mile, which LeBroy obviously won. He was pulled up in the Scottish National, and then last time out, he was pulled up in the Bet Victor.
Yeah, it's another one where you'd sort of say at first glance, you'd struggle to fancy him, but you have to remember that she's a previous winner. It's a mare, isn't it? Impulsive Star. I've been calling her a he. She's been struggling. I'm going to check that so I don't send myself crazy. At first glance, she struggled in her first 3 starts. It's a Gowding shambles. He struggled in his first 3 starts, last 3 starts, but he is a previous winner of this race, so we know that he handles the ground. We know that he's got the ability to win a race like this, and I think it's really interesting that he's £4 lower this time around. So he's weighted to go, wow. It's another one that is a bit of a leap in faith to go for him for win purposes, but I don't think you can write him off at all. But for all that he has something to prove, it wouldn't shock me one bit if he suddenly bounced back to form here after a run that he probably needed at Cheltenham last month to bring him back to fitness.
And Lance Barr, the winner 2 years ago, back in 2018, he went on to run a cracker in the Grand National as well. Of course, that was Bryony Foster's first ride in the big one a couple of years ago. Very out of form though since here.
Indeed, yeah, contrasting seasons, wasn't it? The year he won the Classic Chase and under Brian, he couldn't do anything wrong, really. Went on to carry on running really well, 5th in the National, as you say. And then last season was borderline a write-off, to be honest. Really never got going whatsoever. I think the big slight against him now is his age. He's 13. Needed the run, I imagine, at Warwick back in November, but another one that you can't write off.
No.
And he's on a decent mark on 130, so £4 lower than when winning it. But yeah, comes here out of form and is nothing more than probably a likeable veteran at this stage.
Yeah, we are looking forward to say the least. It's a good thing. Is just very quickly just before we bring the podcast to an end. It's actually one of the races that I do look forward to over the jumps, and I think it's a great stepping stone towards the National or Nationals. Definitely.
The big characteristic of a National, be it the Grand National, the Scottish National, blah, 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 all of the variations of the National, is that you've got to be a real stayer. And Warwick being the combination of 3 mile 5 and usually testing ground as well means that it's a real barometer for these national races. And it's a real test in its own right, much like the Ida is. I think if I remember correctly, when I chat to Kerry Lee on the Christmas episode last month, she won this with Rousset Blanc in 2016. So she's well qualified, and I'm almost certain that when I asked her what are the real tests of stamina along with the Welsh National, she mentioned this race and the Ida. So it just goes to tell you what a real barometer this is for staying chase of the future.
Yeah, you definitely need some stamina to win the races you've just mentioned there. Nick, as always, a pleasure to work with you here on the podcast. As always, thank you to everybody for viewing this on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, and also you can listen to us on SoundCloud and Apple Music as well. But for myself, Bobby, alongside Nick, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the race over the weekend, and we'll be back next week to preview more racing action.